Did you vote in the last election?
No, I wish I had voted, but I wasn't old enough. Did you?
Yes, I did. But I wish I had worked in the campaign. I would certainly have if I hadn't gone to China.
Did you have a chance to work on a campaign?
Yes. I was offered a job as a campaign lead man.
What would you have done if you had accepted the job?
I would have gone to states where there were primary elections. I would have set up rallies and organized people.
You could have traveled all over the country.
Yes, I could have, but instead I traveled all over China. Every 4 years, Americans elect a president. According to the Constitution, any American citizen over 40 years of age who was born in the United States can be president. There are always many candidates who hope they will be elected. There are many political parties in the United States, and most of these will have candidates for president. However, 2 political parties are much stronger than the others. They are called the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. For over 100 years, the man elected as president has always been either a Democrat or a Republican. All American citizens over 18 years of age can vote for a president. The process of electing a president takes nearly a year. During the election year, there are numerous local elections, called primary elections, held in many of the 50 states. These elections indicate who the most popular candidates are. In primary elections, usually held in the winter and spring, candidates run against members of their own parties. In this way, they try to get support of party members around the country. During the summer, both parties have conventions where the party members make the final choice for the party's presidential candidate. Each party chooses a person to run for president and a person to run for vice president. The 2 candidates work as a team. They will win or lose the election together. Once the final candidates are chosen, they campaign around the country trying to win votes. The national election is held in November. The candidate who wins becomes president the following January. The election process is long and costly. Thousands of people work for the leading candidates. Millions of dollars are spent. Individuals prepare to run for presidency for many years. Nearly all of these people fail to ever win. Linda, turn down the record player. I'm trying to read.
That's my new record, Dad. Don't you like it?
The man singing, is he the one who won all the music awards?
Yes. He is also the one singing in the movie we saw last night on TV.
Well, I'm not too fond of his songs. He doesn't sing about meaningful things.
He does. You just don't listen to them.
You play them so loudly, anyone not listening must be deaf.
Okay, Dad. I'll turn down the record player.
One of America's most important exports is her modern music. American popular music is played all over the world. It is enjoyed by people of all ages in all countries. Though the lyrics are English, nevertheless, people not speaking English enjoy it. The reasons for its popularity are its fast pace and rhythmic beat. The music has many origins in the United States. Country music, coming from the rural areas in the southern United States, is one source. Country music features simple themes and melodies, describing day-to-day situations and the feelings of country people. Many people appreciate this music because of the emotions expressed by country music songs. A second origin of American popular music is the blues. It depicted mostly sad feelings, reflecting the difficult lives of American blacks. It is usually played and sung by black musicians, but it is popular with all Americans. Rock music is a newer form of music. This music style, featuring fast and repetitious rhythms, was influenced by the blues and country music. It was first known as rock and roll in the 1950s. Since then, there have been many forms of rock music: hard rock, soft rock, punk rock, disco music, and others. Many performers of popular rock music are young musicians. American popular music is marketed to a demanding audience. New popular songs are heard on the radio several times a day. Some songs become popular all over the world. People hear these songs sung in their original English or sometimes translated to other languages. The words may differ, but the enjoyment of the music is universal.
Peter, listen to the lyrics of this song.
What's so special about this song?
It's from the musical that is so popular in New York right now. Do you like it?
Not very much. It sounds too emotional to me.
That's why it's so popular. It was recorded by Barbara Martin. I've heard that when she sang this song on stage the opening night, she created quite a sensation.
I'm afraid my association with Broadway musicals is rather limited.
Well, then you need an introduction. The School Drama Club is putting on a musical production. Why don't you take me?
I've a better idea. Let's go to a jazz concert, and I'll give you an education in jazz. When people talk about American popular music, they don't just mean country music or rock music. There are two other types of popular music with national and international appeal that are basically American. One is jazz. The other is a musical form associated with New York City theaters. Jazz originated from African religious and folk music. The themes and melodies of jazz music have historical origins. They came from songs sung by black Americans in church or at work. There have been different kinds of jazz music: the blues, ragtime, swing, boogie-woogie, and others. In playing jazz music, the performers blend rhythm and melodies with their skills of improvisation. Modern jazz music has developed into a complex musical style enjoyed more by musicians and older jazz lovers than by the general public. American theater has developed another American musical style. It is associated with a street in New York City, Broadway. Broadway musicals are dramatic productions in which the story is told partly by dialogue and partly through songs. The lyrics of these songs give background information about the story and express the feelings of the characters in the story. Many Broadway musicals have been made into movies that have been shown all over the world. Oklahoma, Sound of Music, My Fair Lady, and West Side Story are some good examples. Songs from these musicals and others have translations in various languages that are sung around the world. Many of them have become popular with people who have not even seen the musicals for which they were written.
Henry, our income tax is due soon. Did you call our accountant?
He's figuring out our taxes right now. I gave him all the records on our income and expenses last week.
The government has deducted taxes from our paychecks all year. I hope we get some of that money back, or at least that we won't have to pay more.
Remember the money your aunt left us when she died, and the money you made when you taught night school?
Yes.
Well, that's all taxable income. That money has put us in a higher tax bracket.
What does that mean?
It means we have to pay more taxes.
Well, it looks like we'll have to make more money this year just to pay last year's taxes.
There are many different kinds of taxes paid in the U.S. The most common tax is the sales tax. When someone buys something, he pays the price of his purchase plus a small additional percentage. This percentage is the sales tax. The revenue from the sales tax goes to the state government to help pay for public schools, public safety, roads, parks, and benefits for the poor. Each state sets its own tax percentage. Some states are considerably lower than others. In some states, there is no sales tax. A second type of tax is the income tax. This tax is a percentage of all the money earned by a family each year. Americans pay income taxes to the federal government, which uses the revenue for national expenses, such as defense, help for the needy, and other public services. Some states also have a state income tax. The income tax, like other taxes, is usually graduated. This means the tax percentage increases as a family's income increases. A third kind of tax is the property tax. This tax is paid by anyone who owns land or a house. The amount of tax is based on the property's value. The revenues from this tax go to local governments for schools and community services. In addition, people must pay the luxury tax when they purchase certain things such as cigarettes and alcoholic beverages. A fifth kind of tax is the inheritance tax. When someone dies, usually his family inherits the dead person's wealth and property. However, those who inherit must pay a percentage of this wealth to the government as an inheritance tax. As we have heard, there are 5 kinds of taxes that Americans pay. Most Americans don't want more taxes.
Dad, what are you watching on television?
I'm watching the news, Linda. Why don't you join me and watch it too?
The news is boring. It's always the same thing.
You should know what's going on in the world. There's always the possibility that things could affect you.
I like things that are more active, more creative, and more entertaining.
If you watch the news regularly, you would find it very informative.
Well, if you want me to watch the news with you, can we change to Channel 7?
Why?
Because the anchorman on Channel 7 has a personality.
The news media in the U.S. consist of radio, television, and newspapers. Together, they are pervasive on the lives of many Americans and influential on their daily routines. Many Americans begin their day reading the newspaper or watching a morning news program on television while drinking their coffee. While driving to work, the news can be heard on the car radio. Throughout the day, the news is broadcast repeatedly on the radio and television. In the evening, news is a prime feature on television, with up to 2 hours of news in the early evening and more news late at night. For those who prefer reading, the evening newspaper offers the reader the possibility of reading the news others see and hear on television. The news media are free of government control. It is up to the general public to choose what to read, watch, or listen to. Therefore, the media must have a sensitivity to the interests of the public. News is big business. However, it is very competitive business, as each station or each newspaper competes for audiences and readers. Each tries to present the news Americans want to know. When an item becomes newsworthy, such as an election or a war, Americans will become familiar with the most minute details as the news media scramble to be as informative as possible. But the result is that the news becomes repetitive. As the news media report the same news items, estimated to be the most interesting and impressive, listeners, viewers, or readers might find it difficult to be selective. Nevertheless, most Americans would not criticize their news media too harshly. The credibility of the news media is generally acknowledged and accepted by the American public. Kate, Nancy, and Steve are breaking up.
It's really a shame. I've heard that they quarrel, but they've always made up afterward.
Things are not working out this time. They're getting a separation soon.
What is going to happen to their daughter, Bonnie?
Nancy is going to take her.
The cost of living is so high. It will be difficult for her to take the responsibility. She had better think the whole thing over.
She seems to have made up her mind. She said she would rather be a single parent than cope with an unhappy marriage.
Well, I hope her parents will be able to talk her out of it.
In the past, American families tended to be quite large. Parents raising 5 or more children were common. Over the years, the size of the family has decreased. One reason for this is an increase in the cost of living. On the average, children attend schools for more years than they used to, making them financially dependent on their families longer. Moreover, children nowadays are better dressed and have more money to spend on entertainment. The parents usually take the responsibility for all the expenses. Meanwhile, families are less close than they used to be. More and more American mothers work away from home. The breakup of the family occurs when the parents divorce. A lot of children in the U.S. live part of their young lives with only one parent. Broken families usually result in problems for children and parents alike. Children blame themselves when their parents separate. They grow up feeling unsettled as they are moved back and forth between parents. Usually, one parent takes the responsibility for raising the children. These single parents must care for the children's emotional and psychological needs, while also supporting them financially. This is very demanding and leaves very little time for the parents' own personal interests. Single parents often marry other single parents. In this type of family, unrelated children are forced to develop brother or sister relationship. The situations of many American families today are not good. However, recent signs indicate that things are getting better. The divorce rate is declining. The rate of childbirth is rising. Perhaps Americans have learned how important families are. Jenny, I haven't seen you for a long time. How have you been?
I've been busy, Bob. How are you?
I'm fine. You have been running, haven't you? Where do you find the time?
It does take a lot of time, but I really enjoy it. Why don't you try it?
Well, I think about it from time to time, but it seems like I never have enough time.
Speaking of not having enough time, I really need to get home and take a shower. I have a class in an hour. I want to be on time for it.
Okay, I'll talk to you some other time. Americans think a great deal about time. They constantly refer to time and the value of keeping busy. From childhood, they learn to value time, and their language reflects this preoccupation with it. As children, they are taught to be on time for events and to do work on time. They learn that the price of committing a crime is to do time in prison. When they are having a good time, they say that time flies. They say sadly of someone who is dying that he is living on borrowed time. From the time of its beginning, American English has reflected this preoccupation with time. Nowhere can this sense of time be seen more clearly than in the working place. Working Americans are bound to the clock. It is a commonly held belief that one should balance work against a set time, for example, an 8-hour day or a 40-hour week. Anything over these time limits is overtime, and the worker should receive more money per hour for work done during overtime. Time during non-working hours is also considered very precious. Whether an American decides on a hectic weekend schedule when Saturday and Sunday are filled with activities, or on a relaxed weekend, the time will be regarded as valuable. Some Americans feel they have a love-hate relationship with time. They love the comforts that progress has brought through work, but they hate the bondage to the clock and the pressures of a time-oriented society. There is little doubt that many Americans feel they have become servants of the clock. Kate, how's the new student in your class doing?
The kid from Haiti? He's having a rough time communicating since he doesn't speak much English. However, the other kids seem to include him pretty well.
Our students are used to new kids who don't speak much English since we have had so many new immigrant families move into our school district.
Don't I know it? This year I have had a Vietnamese, an Ethiopian, a Cuban, and the kid from Haiti in my class. I spend a lot of time with them after class so that they can catch up.
It must have been hard for you since you have to give them special attention in order to help them.
It has been. Nevertheless, it's really rewarding to see them progress and make friends.
America is a country of immigrants. Nearly the entire population can trace its origins to some place outside of the U.S. The group of people with the longest period of residence in North America are American Indians. It is believed that they migrated from Asia several thousand years ago. The next people to come to what is now the U.S. were Europeans. They came as colonists between 350 and 250 years ago. Many of these colonists came from England and settled along the Atlantic coast. Other colonists came from Spain and settled in Florida and in the southwestern part of the country. When the colonists had established themselves, large numbers of Africans were forced to come to North America as slaves. Through the 19th century, many immigrants came to the U.S. The earlier ones were largely from Ireland, Germany, and other parts of Western Europe. Later, many immigrants came from Northern and Southern Europe and from Asia. In this century, many Eastern Europeans have come to the U.S. And more recently, thousands of people from Southeast Asia and the Caribbean area have come to live in the U.S. These people have come to the U.S. for many reasons. Some came in order to make better lives for themselves in a new country. Others came so that they could worship their religions more freely. Many immigrants left their homelands because of war, political unrest, or bad economic and living conditions. Although most immigrants chose to come to the U.S. themselves, they often suffered hardships getting to the country. The conditions in which many people lived when they first arrived were very difficult. However, most immigrants managed to establish themselves and have good lives in the U.S. The U.S. today is called the melting pot, since people who came from different countries have all become Americans. Well, Jenny, the school year is almost over. We just have 2 more weeks before exams. What do you plan to do this summer?
I'm going to teach English to some immigrants in the university's community service program.
That sounds interesting. Don't you need to speak any foreign language for a job like that?
No, you don't. You just have to present the language simply and give the students a chance to practice speaking.
Come to think of it, that's the way I was taught to speak Chinese. But speaking Chinese didn't help me learn to read and write Chinese.
My students won't want to read and write English, at least not now. They are more interested in speaking.
You sound very knowledgeable about all this. How do you know so much?
I took a Teaching English as a Second Language course last year when you were in China. I've talked with the program administrators quite a lot. I think I would like to be an ESL teacher when I graduate.
The United States is primarily an English-speaking country. The majority of the population speaks English as their native language. Business, education, and most public aspects of life are conducted in English. Across the country, people pronounce English sounds in several different ways, and some regional vocabulary differences exist. But for the most part, Americans speak one common language. This language is sometimes called American English. However, not everyone in the U.S. is a native speaker of English. Most immigrants to the country are speakers of other languages. There are hundreds of communities around the U.S. where English is not the most commonly used language. Chinese, Italian, German, Armenian, Greek, Vietnamese, and French are all spoken in numerous communities in the U.S. Spanish is the second most commonly spoken language after English in the U.S. It is widely spoken in New York and across the southern part of the country. For speakers of other languages, learning English is important. But traditionally, teaching people to speak English as a second language was given little attention. Non-English speakers were expected to pick up the language through contact in public. Recently, this has changed. Today, most large public schools and community colleges have ESL, English as a second language programs. American English teachers feel that English students should learn the language the way they will be using it. Therefore, ESL programs teach different English lessons to different students. Some programs teach students to communicate in English in public. Other programs teach the kind of English people will need on their jobs. American ESL instructional methods emphasize the importance of communication to language learning. These methods do not feature grammatical explanations and translation. The instructional goal is to get the English learners to learn by using their target language.